I made a video a few minutes ago when I was talking about creativity and exuberance, and during the course of that I found myself talking about overflowing and how sometimes when you're caught up in the early stages of the creative process and that exuberant phase that I think is so conducive to good creative practice, it can feel like you're just overflowing with ideas. And I've just been thinking about why I said that and what the significance is, because it's a really funny thing to say. I mean, I know what something looks like when it overflows. You know, I've turned the taps on my sinks and forgotten about them and they've overflowed. I've poured too much tea in a cup and watched that overflow, and I've seen rivers overflowing their banks. I've seen all that, but I've never overflowed myself. I have absolutely no idea what it feels like to overflow, and yet I use that expression completely seamlessly, and I kind of understand it. You know, I can feel it in myself. You know, I can feel the resonance of it in myself now. I know what it feels like to overflow with ideas. And similar expressions like, I feel like I'm going to explode. I've used that expression before now and heard it many times. But again, I've got no idea what it feels like to explode. I know what it feels like to be angry, and I know what it looks like to be angry. But if I was going to describe someone accurately who is angry, I couldn't in all honesty say that they literally look as if they're going to explode. They might be red in the face, there might be some tension in the muscles. You know, I could describe it visually. But there's actually nothing in there that says they're going to explode. So I'm just wondering where I got this sense from that I can use a term like I feel like I'm going to explode when I've got no actual experience of that, nor could I have any experience of that. Or I feel like I'm wilting, or I feel like, or I feel a bit spacey, whatever these terms which are completely felt. They're not kind of bloodless, rational descriptions. They describe physical states, physical ways of being, and yet they're obviously not ways of being that you can actually inhabit. So what's going on with that? I don't really know. I suppose where I'm going with that is that since those things are metaphors, you know, when we talk about anger and we feel like we're going to explode, and George Lakoff talks a lot about this, you know, he's talking about how when we use phrases like that, we're effectively mobilizing a metaphor, conceptual metaphor, which envisages anger as pressure in a sealed container. That's how it's usually configured. And so we know what pressure in a sealed container is like. We may have had experience of that, seeing it or hearing about it at the very least. And then we draw on that metaphor conceptually to flesh out the otherwise abstract idea of anger and allow us to explain it and describe it and express it to ourselves and to the people. So anger is pressure in a sealed container, but I don't just use it in a kind of bloodless linguistic way. That's how I feel it. It feels like that, which is odd. So in some odd way, I must be not just kind of processing that language in my head or images, I must be internalizing those images so that I become, on some level, a sealed container with pressure inside it, if I'm feeling or describing anger. Or if I'm feeling exuberant and feel that I'm overflowing, I must, on some conceptual level, be inhabiting the being of a container that's overflowing, or the inhabiting a river, the being of a river that's overflowing its banks, or inhabiting a sink that's taps have been left running just too long and it's overflowing its sides, which is quite an odd thought. So I always imagine myself kind of looking at these metaphors and interpreting them. But that can't be what's happening, otherwise I wouldn't say I feel this way. I must be actually living them in some odd way, not as a human witness to them, but as participants within them in all their human and non-human glory.